Today on Christian World News, upheaval in Egypt. After 30 years in power, President Hosni Mubarak steps down. Big question now is who takes over? And what does this all mean for the country's Christians? Plus, he spent 3 months trapped underground. Now he's traveling the world telling the story of his dramatic rescue and God's unfailing grace. And signs and wonders in the land down under. The prayer revival that's literally healing a nation. A popular uprising shakes loose a dictator that ruled Egypt for 30 years. Hello, everyone. I'm George Thomas. Well, dramatic events for 18 days. Protests, as you all know, rocked Egypt. Tens of thousands camped out in the streets of Cairo, specifically the epicenter, Tahrir Square, where hundreds of thousands, even millions, marched in the streets. At times, the protests turned violent, and reportedly more than 300 people lost their lives. But in the end, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak stepped down and handed over power to the military. Now comes the big question: who eventually will come to power in Egypt? And one group that's been in the background and has many experts worried is the Muslim Brotherhood. As Jennifer reports from Washington, their writings show they want to establish Islamic states.
Hundreds of thousands of Egyptians continue their call for change.
We need freedom, freedom, freedom.
Egypt's Vice President Omar Suleiman has begun talks with opposition leaders, including members of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Brotherhood's participation in decision-making about Egypt's future is now becoming a political issue here in the U.S. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor says, "I think the primary goal should be to stop the spread of radical Islam. That is where our focus should be." A growing number of people in the U.S. and abroad are growing concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood gaining influence in a new Egyptian government. A Brotherhood text called "Jihad is the Way" details support for the establishment of an Islamic regime. Jihad for Allah, a Muslim Brotherhood leader writes, is not limited to the specific region of the Islamic countries, since the Muslim homeland is one and is not divided. The banner of jihad has already been raised in some of its parts and shall continue to be raised with the help of Allah until every inch of the land of Islam will be liberated and the State of Islam established. Egyptian Christian Michael Youssef pastors a church in Atlanta. He tells CBN News he dreads thinking about Egypt under the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood.
If the Muslim Brotherhood take over the reins of power in Egypt, God may have mercy on all of us and the Christians, Israel, the West, and of course we're going to lose an incredible, powerful allies, and it'll be like a domino. The others are going to start falling. Jordan and all the other moderate states, secular states.
And author Joel Rosenberg warns the U.S. should be wary of the Muslim Brotherhood at the bargaining table in Egypt.
The Muslim Brotherhood is the worst-case scenario for the Egyptian people, for American interests, and certainly for the Israelis. They want Sharia law. They want a global caliphate. And if there was a true revolution that led to the Muslim Brotherhood, radical Muslims taking over Egypt, as radical Muslims took over Iran 30 years ago, this would be the twin pillars of radicalism.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Jennifer. Joining us now is Paul Marshall of the Hudson Institute. He's made several trips to Egypt and is an advocate for the country's Christians. Paul, you've been hearing my colleague Jennifer Wishon report from D.C. I'm interested to find out, what do the Christians of Egypt think about the Muslim Brotherhood?
Most of the Christian leaders of the major churches have expressed their fear of the Muslim Brotherhood. While they have been repressed under Mubarak, the dominant note is fear that the future is likely to be worse than the past. They hope it won't be, but there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of trepidation among the Christians in Egypt.
So am I reading you correctly? Are you, in essence, saying that Mubarak was good for Egypt's Christians?
No, they were repressed and discriminated under Mubarak. It was almost impossible to build churches, difficult to repair churches. And perhaps the major thing, when Christians were attacked by extremist Muslim groups, which happens almost every week in Egypt, they weren't protected under Mubarak, and the people were not punished. So they had complaints enough about Mubarak. But as we've just heard, the big fear is that what if the Muslim Brotherhood comes to power? They want an open, free, democratic society, like the majority of those demonstrators we've seen in Tahrir Square. But behind that is a fear of more radical forms of Islam, a fear of the Muslim Brotherhood.
And is it your sense that today the Christians are perhaps breathing a sigh of relief that light is at the end of the tunnel, that their plight and their situation as Christians, making up about 10% of the population, is going to get better, or is it going to get worse?
I think I haven't spoken to people since Mubarak actually stepped down. But I think the fear is still there, saying, well, it's good that he's gone. This is this could be a first step towards democracy and freedom. But what comes next? Now the power in Egypt is the military, as it has been for the last 60 years. And what will they do? Will there be presidential elections, parliamentary elections? When will they be? So I think there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of concern. And I think the demonstrators tomorrow, I think they should celebrate today. But tomorrow the question is, well, what happens now?
Yeah, and two of Egypt's neighbors, as you know, Paul, Sudan and Gaza, are ruled by factions of the Muslim Brotherhood. What's it like for Christians who live in these two countries?
It is terrible. Christians in Gaza have never had it easy, but under Hamas, which is a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot, their situation has worsened. Churches, Christian bookstores have been attacked. Further south in Sudan, the National Islamic Front, which took power there in 1983, was another offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Christians in the north were persecuted, and the government waged a war, well, several wars, one against the West in Darfur, but against also a north-south conflict. And there are very many Christians in the south. And, 2 million people have died in those conflicts in Sudan, and probably the majority of those are Christians. So the examples we have, though they're very different sorts of countries and territories, the examples we have so far of where the Muslim Brotherhood offshoots have come to power, the results have been terrible for Christians. And that's one reason for the fear. There's still hope, let's emphasize that, but the hope and the fear of Christians in Egypt.
Okay, last question. We have been focusing on the Muslim Brotherhood. Absent from all of the dialogue on the international scene has been the Christians. As I mentioned earlier on the broadcast, they make up 10% of the population in the country. Who is speaking out for them? And do you think they are playing any role in any future government?
There are, well, firstly, very few people are speaking out for the Christians. You are one of them, and there are others. But at governmental level, at least the United States government has not said anything that I've been aware of about the Christian community. In Europe, where there is increasing concern about persecution of Christians throughout the Middle East, they have raised this question, but basically no major political figures are speaking out for the Christians there.
Okay, terrific. Paul Marshall, as always, sir, it's good to have you back on the broadcast. Thank you so much for your insights. Okay, we spoke with our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, right after President Hosni Mubarak stepped down. He told us how Egypt Christians are responding.
I was talking to an Egyptian Christian earlier today, and he sees a prophetic aspect to this. If you read Isaiah 19, it talks about one day a holy highway between Assyria, Egypt, and Israel. And that's what many Christians are doing in Egypt, praying, despite this chaos, praying for the fulfillment of that prophecy.
And to see Chris's entire interview, including Israel's reaction, log on to our website, cbnnews.com. As Paul was talking about the Christians in southern Sudan, this week we learned that the southern Sudan will become the world's newest country in July. The final results of last month's election show more than 98% of voters in the South choosing independence. Sudan's president says he accepts the outcome. The Muslim North and Christian South have fought a decades-long civil war that ended back in 2005 with a peace agreement guaranteeing a vote. More than 2 million people have died in this conflict. The two sides must now negotiate a border, citizenship rights, and oil rights. And one man's journey from darkness to light and how he found God's goodness even in the depths of the earth.
CWNews.org, your constant news source on the World Wide Web. Find daily updates on the global church. Watch the weekly broadcast.
3 former presidents come together to honor the life and ministry.
Also available in podcast. Read in-depth insights into our reporter blogs.
Taliban kidnapped at least 18
In
South
Peru, a
Korean
handful of
Christians.
Your online news source for complete coverage of the global church.
Have you ever wondered why some people seem to achieve success so readily? They're able to see opportunities all around themselves, conquering challenges and achieving success. How is it others are able to overcome destructive behaviors and find true satisfaction in life? And what enables some people to have such faith in God
Help heal our daughter.
that they see miraculous answers to their prayers? The answer to these questions and how to live a victorious life are found in the secret laws of God's kingdom.
In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, you'll discover powerful keys to unlock the miraculous in your life.
As you follow the laws of the secret kingdom and make them a part of your life, the results will be nothing short of incredible.
If I could build this big, strong body, this armor around myself, then nobody could hurt me again. I felt like if my mother didn't love me, my biological father didn't love me, then how in the world could anybody else love me? God loves us, and He wants the best for us. I'm living proof of that. Just give Him a chance.
The husband of an American missionary killed in Mexico says he'll continue their work in that country. Nancy Davis died last month after gunmen opened fire on their truck about 70 miles south of the Texas border. She and her husband Sam were visiting churches there to establish that they had established in Mexico. Sam says he prays for the men who killed his wife, but believes they'll never be caught and tried. He also says despite the dangers, he will continue to visit and support churches in Mexico. Last August, an underground shaft collapsed a mine in northern Chile, trapping 33 miners deep underground. The whole world followed the dramatic events and watched with joy as the miners emerged one by one from the shaft 3 months later. Many of those rescued miners have since become celebrities, but one in particular feels the world needs to hear his story. Here's Stan Jeter.
Last October, Chilean miner Jose Enriquez emerged to the light of day for the first time after spending 3 months trapped deep underground. Now he is sharing the story of his dramatic rescue in different cities of Europe and the United States. In Washington, Enriquez joined President Barack Obama as an honored guest at the National Prayer Breakfast. He recalled the desperation they all felt after a rockfall trapped his group of 33 miners nearly half a mile underground.
We realized, however, that we only had one alternative.
Y se llamaba Dios.
And that was God Himself.
Enriquez explained that they had many needs underground and were running out of food.
Así que la decisión fue oración. Todos los días
So we decided that unless we prayed and God did a miracle, there would be no way out.
Enriquez's testimony drew praise from those attending the prayer breakfast, including Chile's ambassador to the United States.
A privilege to be at this national prayer breakfast with our miner, Jose Enriquez, who was able to share his intense spiritual experience, that it was faith that helped our miners in Chile endure 17 days without any contact with the world and 69 days at a depth of 2,000 feet.
Pastor Alfred Cooper was with the president of Chile when the mining accident occurred.
I can say that the president himself called for a prayer meeting, and in the chapel of the presidential palace, we led a prayer meeting, something like the spirit of this prayer breakfast today, the spirit of Jesus.
And underground, Enriquez cultivated a spiritual climate that gave hope and emotional stability to the trapped miners.
I came out and passed the psychologist exam, and they thanked me for doing their work. So I have no problem with terrible dreams or anything like that. I have the joy of God in my heart, and that is wonderful.
Enriquez says he's had his share of mining accidents, but this one left him a message.
Saying that he's still hearing prayer and he's still in control. That he is a God who makes promises and he'll keep them. That we're living in a time of love and mercy, and he continues to call us. And he's waiting for people to have an encounter with him.
Stan Jeter, CBN News.
Coming up, God's power moving through Australia's churches. How miracles are shaking the land of Oz.
It's the one thing news viewers can agree on.
They want change.
Now, the world's leading Christian news organization brings you national, international news and analysis throughout the day. Mornings, the busy lunch hour, late afternoon, and evenings. It's news with a Christian perspective whenever you want it. Available on the web 24/7 at cbnnews.com.
You and I live in a visible world, yet there is at work all around us an invisible kingdom of unlimited goodness and power. In the Bible, Jesus Christ has given us fundamental kingdom principles that are as valid in our world today as the law of gravity. These principles can overcome every obstacle or circumstance we encounter and guarantee our success.
In The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, the final teaching in the inspiring DVD series, Pat Robertson reveals how the power of God's kingdom works and unlocks the secrets of fidelity, miracles, and dominion. Powerful principles that will change your life.
You can reach from a world of impossibilities into a realm of limitless possibility and power.
The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, available now.
I became a slave to it. It got really, really addictive for me. I said, God, you have to deliver me out of this. That woman of God laid her hands on me. My God instantly delivered. I didn't have any more feeling to smoke, to use crack cocaine. I didn't want any of that anymore. And if he could change me, he could change anyone.
Australia has been devastated by natural disasters this year. Flash floods and a cyclone have taken a toll on the island nation. But in the midst of the hardship, there is some good news. Pockets of revivals are breaking out and miracles are being reported as a result of a prayer movement known as Rise Up Australia. Gary Lane has more from Sydney.
Australia was once considered a Christian nation, but aggressive secularization has caused many people here to grow cold to Christianity. Only about 10% of the population regularly attends church. Yet a number of churches and ministries are becoming more resolute in praying for the nation and desperately crying out to God. Pastor Daniel Nalaya began a prayer movement called Rise Up Australia in response to a dream he had in 2000. Now, more than 10 years later, Christians gather for monthly prayer meetings in 75 Australian cities.
These prayer groups are focused on praying to breakthrough. A revolution of love for a national reformation is what we are looking for. And I can smell the fragrance of the rain. I know Australia will come to Jesus in the next 10 years.
The goal of Rise Up Australia is to get Christians here to pray for the transformation of their nation. And already, because of prayer, a number of miracles have been reported.
The deaf hear, the lame start to walk, people are set free from depression and demonic spirits. Elizabeth Ryan suffered from depression for more than 2 years.
if we'd kept on that track, you know, I might have ended up with suicide, or certainly marriage would have broken up.
But Elizabeth sought prayer on one of the revival nights, and that's when she received healing and deliverance from demonic depression.
He started casting demons out of me. Yeah, marriage has been restored, so much better. I just want to worship God like never before.
Even Australia's secular media is reporting on the miracles. One of the leading dailies, The Age, wrote about a woman who was raised from the dead. Diana Shield suffered a heart attack while on a bus tour in Israel. Dr. Murray James Wallace, an expert in cardiac resuscitation, was seated behind Diana and testifies that Diana was lifeless.
A pulse that stopped for that period of time, not breathing. It certainly is a cardiac arrest. It's a pulseless cardiac arrest. So to put that all in the context of a bus, with one doctor, with no equipment, no drugs, and suboptimal conditions, your chance of coming back is very slim.
I went into a dark place and a voice that wasn't a nice voice said, "You're going to die in Israel." And I responded and said, that can't be right, because I had a word from the Lord this morning from one of the other men about the future of my life.
As Dr. James Wallace was trying to revive Diana, Pastor Nalaya began praying.
In essence, it said, Diana, spirit of death, leave you. Satan is the loser, Jesus is the winner, and life come back. And she just turned to him. She opened her eyes and she smiled weakly. I said to the pastor, I said, well, I'll place myself under your authority and under the authority of Jesus.
Pastor Bill Kalakata also claims he was revived after suffering from cardiac arrest in Canberra. He says he died while attending a national prayer meeting in Australia's Parliament.
Pastor Denny started praying speaking from the platform and said, let's pray. He commanded the spirit of death to go away.
Pastor Kolakata shares his 20-minute supernatural journey.
These angels were just taking me. Then they took me to a foot of a mountain. To my surprise, at the top of the mountain, there was a beautiful building, beautiful church. But one thing catches my eyes when I look at the building. The foundation of it is made up of beautiful white sand. Then I heard the voice of the Lord spoke to me. I said, son, what are you singing now is the picture of my church in the world. Looks beautiful on the top, but doesn't have any foundation. The foundation is very weak.
And today, Pastor Kolakata shares that message with churches and anyone else who will listen. As for Pastor Nalaya, he's convinced God is pouring His Spirit out on Australia after many years of prayer and intercession. He believes the Rise Up Australia prayer movement will spread, and in the aftermath of drought, devastating floods, and cyclones, Australia's Christian faith will be revived. Gary Lane, CBN News, Sydney, Australia.
Thanks, Gary. Really tremendous news. Very encouraging in the midst of all the natural disasters they have faced and endured this year. Well, for more great reports on how God is at work in the world through His church, just go to our website, cwnews.org. We'll be back right after this.
We created this website as a place where kids can learn the Bible in a whole new way.
Kids will love Superbook.tv. Their games, the ability to create your own personal Superbook characters. We even have a place for kids to listen to music on Superbook Radio.
Superbook is CBN's animated series that teaches the Bible through the eyes of two friends and their robot sidekick. We're going to tell stories all the way from creation to Christ's return.
The website also teaches kids life lessons. Parents can spend time online with their kids learning about the Bible.
Superbook and Superbook.tv are entirely gospel-centered, and by supporting it, you'll help bring God's Word to children all over the world.
We're reaching a new generation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Together, we can give today's kids the truth of the Bible in a fun and exciting way that will change their lives.
Visit Superbook.tv today.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy.
How many nickels are in $1?
there are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Christian World News, your window to the global church. For stories of revival,
Another revival.
persecution,
Relatives and fellow Christians mourn his
First country over the International Day
I'm
line.
George Thomas in Baghdad, and coming up on the broadcast, an exclusive interview.
and the impact of Christian leaders. Watch Christian World News.
And finally this week, Israeli archaeologists have uncovered an ancient church they believe marks the burial site of the prophet Zechariah. Julie Stahl has that story from Israel.
The 1,500-year-old church is situated in the Judean hills about 20 miles from Jerusalem. Archaeologists discovered it after Palestinian looters searching for treasures to sell damaged the surface of the site.
In order to prevent and to salvage whatever archaeological finds were here, the Israel Antiquities Authority decided to start excavating, and the results were fantastic.
Archaeologist Shai Bartura says what's special about the church is how well it has been preserved.
The best way to see this is by looking at the mosaic floor, which is a magnificent mosaic floor. The southern hall is the one best preserved, and you can see there intricate geometrical designs. You can see wonderful wild scenes with wild animals such as fish swimming in a pond. There's another spectacular scene of a lion hunting a gazelle.
Marble columns imported from Turkey lined the central hall of the basilica.
We're trying to figure out why such a magnificent building was built here.
One theory goes back to Bible times. This part of the church was built over an ancient tomb. Archaeologists say it could be the tomb of the prophet Zechariah, and the church was placed here as a memorial. Remains of the church are the only things visible on the surface now, but archaeologists say Jewish villages existed here during the Second Temple period and hundreds of years later during the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans. Jews of that day built a system of tunnels and caves under this hill for living and as a means of escape. Experts speculate an earthquake in the 8th century destroyed the church.
One of the most wonderful things about archaeology, and especially about sites like these, is the visitor coming to this church, uncovered now, basically walks into the same building and sees the same thing that the Christian worshippers would have seen 1,500 years ago.
The Israel Antiquities Authority plans to eventually open the site to the public. In the meantime, it will be covered up with sand and layers of fabric in order to preserve it from decay. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Khirbet Midras.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's edition of Christian World News. I hope you've enjoyed all of our stories. I hope you will join us again right here again next week. Until then, goodbye and God bless.